Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast and in turn continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
Leadership should be shared. In fighter flying, one day it's the squadron commander that leads the formation, and the next day it's the young fighter pilot that does it.
When the stakes are high, strong leaders have a quiet calm about them. They trust their teams to rise to the challenge, understanding that shared responsibility fuels progress.
I believe the key principles there is you give people ownership of the ideas, of how they feel and believe is the best way to execute on this strategy and vision. It requires, obviously, patience. It requires trust. Transformation requires speed, and speed depends on trust.
Being a public company can be hard. Small missteps can have outsized consequences. I'm Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR, and over the last 25 years, we've helped thousands of companies understand and navigate the stock market and the media. We'll demystify these and other increasingly complex stakeholder groups so you can focus on what you do best, building your company and unlocking your true potential. This is Welcome to the Arena from ICR. Aristotle once said, "He who has never learned to obey cannot be a good commander." With a military background and a leadership philosophy rooted in trust and empowerment, I think our guest today would probably agree. Mohammed Alardhi is the executive chairman of Investcorp, a leading global manager of alternative investments. Under his leadership, Investcorp has grown its assets under management from $10 billion to $53 billion in just 9 years. All that while simultaneously diversifying and expanding its global footprint. A former fighter pilot, Mohammed retired from the military in 1978 with the rank of Air Vice Chairman and was the youngest and longest-serving chief of the Omani Royal Air Force. In addition to his role at Investcorp, Mohammed serves as chairman of the Muscat Stock Exchange and sits on several boards, including the International Advisory Board of the Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C., the Eisenhower Fellowship in Philadelphia, the World Economic Forum's Community of Chairpersons, and the Harvard Kennedy School's Dean Council, among others. Mohammed is the author of 3 published books. The most recent is Connecting to the Future, which became a U.S. bestseller in 2023. Let's enter the arena with Mohammed Alardhi. I wanted to go back about 20 years ago or so, Mohammed. How did the opportunity to join Investcorp's board come to you? And maybe you can describe the organization, the AUM, the global reach, and the strategy at that time, if we kind of went back all those years.
Sure. So Investcorp is really a global investment firm that invests our investors and shareholders' capital in the private markets. Investcorp came about in 1982, and it was really to do one major thing. It's to connect the capital of the Gulf and the wealth of the families and retail investors in the Gulf with the opportunities that were there initially in the United States and then Europe. So since 1982, this is what Investcorp has been doing, is raising capital in the Gulf, employing it in the United States, some in Europe. And of course, you've heard of some of the really great deals that Investcorp has done over the years, like Tiffany and Gucci and others. And it continued to do that until 2015. In 2015, we took a major overview of the markets, the business. We talked to our investors and stakeholders, and we decided that we really need to change things. We need to move from a small boutique investment firm to a global investment firm in the alternatives. And we set from 2015 to really grow and diversify our products, our markets. So now we have around $54 billion of AUM, divided into three major business verticals: private equity, real assets, credit. We have an insurance business, and we have infrastructure.
Yeah, I think the going from 10 billion to 53 billion, you kind of mentioned that somewhat casually, Mohammed. That's a huge increase in AUM in a short period of time, I might add, in 9 years. It sounds to me like it was a team effort and a lot of people involved in kind of changing the direction of the business. When you sat there in 2015, what were your main priorities to really transform the business over the next 10 years?
One, we saw that the whole world has really changed. The market has changed. There were things in 2015 that didn't exist in 1982. Things like the American economy has grown many times since 1982 and became more complex and produced many asset classes and sub-sectors of that asset classes. So we knew that we really needed to go deeper and do more in this huge economy. Europe, at the same time, for instance, real estate in Europe was really not institutionalized. In 2015, it was a good market that we knew we can do a lot in real estate. India has changed since 1982. It became one of the major growing economies in the world. Southeast Asia and China is the same. Japan has really grown and saved trillions of dollars that really needed to be invested. And so when we talked to our investors and stakeholders, they really needed a lot more from Investcorp than just one market or two markets. And they wanted us to be the one-stop shop for them for their investment in private equity and real assets and credit and so on. And so this is really what we set to do, is to diversify the business, future-proof the business, and ensure that we build scale.
Yeah. Well, that was quite a grandiose plan to come up with, and certainly a great pivot, but someone actually had to execute that plan, which seems like it was a very important and challenging task. Now, I know you had an amazing career in the Royal Air Force of Oman and then found yourself as executive chairman of Investcorp. How did the military experience in your life shape your approach to that task in front of you, executing that plan, transforming Investcorp into kind of what it is today?
Tom, the military is really a huge experience, because for me, it was the place that I learned about people and about leadership. And as you know, in the military, from day one, you're dealing with people. And from day one, you're responsible for people. And so I brought, a few principles, I would say, from the military to the life of investment. And that is, leadership should be shared. In fighter flying, one day it's the squadron commander that leads the formation, and the next day it's the young fighter pilot that does it. Number two, it's all about teamwork. No fighter pilot can do anything or succeed on his or her own. And number three, this really required trust, and trust brings with it delegation. And those are two crucial things, I believe, in leadership. And then, of course, you do all this with calculated risks taking. And so the move from the military to the investment and to the business, since I think those principles work everywhere, it was really like moving from one cockpit to the another, where, maybe the controls are a bit different, but the fundamental principles of leadership are the same.
Yeah. Well, I know that in your book, Connecting to the Future, which everyone should read, you compare kind of leading a global investment management firm like Investcorp to flying a fighter jet. You kind of talked about that analogy a little bit, but can you elaborate a little bit more? I know you used the term situational awareness. How do you think about situational awareness in business?
I think in both the examples that you put in the military and the business, Tom, situational awareness is really important. You obviously in the Air Force, you needed to know where your space, you needed to know your position in that big formation. what is your wingman status are, who are the threats, and who's looking after your six, and then your mission and your objectives. When are you going to be where, and what are you going to do at particular time and space. Similarly, with the investment and management, you need to know your positions of the markets. You need to know your performance of your team, the global risks, and what are the trends in the investment and the emerging opportunities. And so for both roles, you require quick decision-making, strong team coordination. You want to communicate very well, and you manage your risks. And so all this, builds your confidence, your communication, your teamwork, and I think above all, your situational awareness.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too seems to be monitoring. In your cockpit, I would imagine you're constantly evaluating data, synthesizing it, monitoring everything. And, in finance, particularly in such a global organization that you run, just monitoring global markets, understanding geopolitical impacts, tracking the economy. It's so much macro information. How does that all get synthesized down into an investment decision? It seems like the same principles, but you have to boil it down to, like you said, a decision that everybody is behind.
One of the things important in investment is that wherever we are, we build local teams. Those local teams have their fingers on the pulse. They know their region, they know their market. We ensure that they are empowered with all the information they get, the relationship that we need, the ecosystem around them of deal pipeline, analysis. It really comes down to the experiences that you have gained over the years and the repeatable investment and products that you keep making across the world. Committees and investment committees look at all this and take a decision on it.
Yeah, I know in the book, Mohammed, you also mentioned the concept of leading from behind. Maybe you can explain kind of that style of leadership and how it works in practice at Investcorp.
Really, this is about setting the vision and strategy for the firm and then really stepping back a bit to let people own it. And I believe the key principles there is you give people ownership of the ideas, of how they feel and believe is the best way to execute on this strategy and vision. Let them innovate. Don't make them wait for leaders to think for them. And the Air Force was the same. When you do it, it requires obviously patience, it requires trust, and it's investment in your team and in your processes. And it's, I think, creates sustainable leadership throughout the organization. And I think I say it in the book, transformation requires speed, and speed depends on trust. And this is really very important.
Yeah, that's a great line, by the way. I'm gonna take that one. You've talked a little bit about challenging the status quo, questioning how things have been done. I would imagine when you got into the seat in 2015, you had to challenge the status quo, the way things were done, if you were going to get to the next level. Maybe you can give an example or two of when kind of that challenge, looking in the mirror, questioning how you were doing things, led to like a significant breakthrough for Investcorp.
I think in 2015, one of the important things, and I kept asking, is why are we at $10 billion of AUM? And, repeatedly asking that question. Why, for instance, Blackstone is much bigger than us when they've started after we've started? And, kept saying that, if we don't grow, we're going to die. And so we really need to set a big target for us. And we did. We set $25 billion of AUM target in 5 years, which we then achieved in 3 years. Then we set another target to double that to $50 billion. And that was achieved. It was those simple, I think, questions that then you follow them up with like a plan and a vision. But it didn't stop there. Like, I mean, for instance, in 2015, 70% of our capital or funding came from the Gulf. 25% came from international markets. Today, it's the opposite. We have 30% from the Gulf, 70% from global markets. We've expanded from operating in 3 markets to 7 markets globally. We diversified beyond the deal by deal to include fund structures. We created new platforms, insurance, GP staking. And the key was what you asked, was breaking ingrained habits and perspective and pushing people to think bigger.
Yeah. And I think innovation is a part of breaking the status quo. And I know Investcorp talks a lot about innovation, a commitment to innovation. When a lot of people from the outside of your business think about innovation, they're always thinking about technology and maybe Palo Alto and Northern California. What does innovation mean to you within Investcorp and within kind of the alternative asset management business?
Tom, our culture is really, believe, unique. We have 500 people from 50 different nationalities. And for us, it really starts right from the beginning with recruitment, because we want to hire naturally curious people.
Yep.
And create with that an environment where questions are encouraged, new ideas are welcomed, risk-taking is not penalized. It is not a one-mistake firm, for sure. And then constantly, ask questions up and down the organization. I believe also making everyone feel like an owner, and everyone in Investcorp has the opportunity to own piece of the firm. Encourage independent thinking throughout the firm. As our head of HR, Pete Romney, said, once you get that feeling that you can think bigger, you're hooked. It becomes a career crack. And he's right. It's once you unleash that ability to innovate and comfort for people to ask questions and raise voices, it's a fantastic thing.
And the growth in AUM supports that exactly. Can you correlate it exactly? I don't know. But when you have that kind of culture of innovation, it sets people free to be themselves and work hard and be creative in terms of what they go after and the returns that they can make. How about, let's get down on more of a micro level, Mohammed. You've been involved in a lot of high profile situations in your career, a lot of interesting deals, including a bid for AC Milan. What lessons did you learn from deals that did materialize? What always goes great? And what have you learned from those deals that just didn't seem to materialize for you?
So with AC Milan, I must say we really like this club. It has great history. It's one of the most celebrated clubs in the world. But we were in a deal, it didn't work. And I believe, failing with good intentions has to be celebrated, because it sort of gives you the ability to walk away when things are really not good, things that don't work for the deal. I also believe that understanding why a deal does not move forward is vitally important. These experiences make us stronger and wiser, like I said. We always maintain our investment discipline, whether it is pricing or sector or culture, all that, and always will focus on the long-term value creation rather than just completing a particular deal.
Yeah, and I think part of your job, as you know all too well, is balancing the short term and the long term. And I wanted to ask you, how do you balance the pressure of short-term results with kind of long-term strategic planning? What's the trick to that in your mind?
In our business, you must take a long-term view while delivering consistent results. And our investment really combines that together. So we have products that you look at for 5 and 10 years, and there are products that our investors look at to give them yield every quarter or every 6 months or every year. I guess when you focus on sustainable growth and value creation, these things work together, and we always, keep our stakeholders center, our shareholders, our employees, our investors, and our other business partners by building, resilient business models, focus on quality of investment rather than quantity, and balance this growth objectives with risk management.
Challenging the status quo has been a cornerstone of Investcorp's success, and in his latest book, Mohammed expands on this concept, exploring the danger of nostalgia in business and its potential to hinder growth and transformation. I asked Mohammed how businesses can strike the balance between honoring their history and embracing innovation.
So you're right, Tom. I mean, nostalgia is really like a drug that you need to deal with because it makes people live in the past. They're comfortable, and so they makes them live in their comfort zone and makes them think that their present situation is their destination. That's the danger of it. Like I said, if you don't grow, you die. And nostalgia takes you to that, staying where you are. To give you, for instance, an example, the firm had great successes. Like I said, some of the early deals we had, Tiffany and Gucci, were landmark deals. And they're worth talking about. They had occurred 30 years ago for Investcorp. And so you can be proud of your history, but you can't keep living in that past. You need to say and know and create the Tiffany of today and the Gucci of today. And so maybe it's cybersecurity company that we did, or the accounting firm or consultancy firm of today that we had to work and make it great and big. So I think the setting the vision of growth and the strategy really excites people and really brings people together, because then they really see what each and every one of them is really creating and achieving for the future.
And growing from 10 billion to 50 billion in just 9 years, a lot of companies would have problems managing that, because that implies more infrastructure, maybe breaking down silos, things like that. Talk about the kind of, as you were growing that quickly, how were you managing that, and what were some of the key strategies about adding that level of growth, but also executing it behind the scenes so that it looked flawless?
So, Tom, I believe there were two parts. There's an external part and there's an internal part. And in the internal part, what we really wanted to achieve is diversified investor base and products. We wanted to focus on scaling up the business in multiple ways. We wanted to leverage existing capital in new ways. We wanted to expand global presence. Internally, like you said, it was about breaking down silos, was improving communication. We had many offsites. We continued to ensure that the rank and file of the firm is really aligned. We continued to question the status quo. Like I said before, we empowered the team members to take ownership and continue to innovate.
How about for you personally, Mohammed? You have an amazing resume, from the Air Force to building Investcorp successfully to some of the other boards that you sit on. When you achieve a certain level of success, how do you continue to challenge yourself? What gets you excited right now in terms of what you'd like to accomplish in the next few years?
Like I said, and put in the book, I always go back to my father's advice, which is really, don't be too proud to ask questions out of fear that people will laugh at you. So I really don't have that burden. I ask questions, and I really don't shy away from people thinking that I don't know this subject, or I think that gives me a good challenge, because when you free yourself from not wanting people to know that you don't know, it's a really great freedom. I maintain curiosity and continue to learn. I'm lucky, like you said, to be on some really great boards that really gives you those inputs in your mind to be able to think. I constantly, seek from everyone new perspectives and to know what are their, challenges and success stories. And I push myself to think bigger, just as I push the organization to do bigger things.
How do you navigate the complexities of different continents, different countries, different cultural and economic environments? And I'm sure it's a learning experience throughout your career, but how would you answer that question?
I think we do different things. One, obviously, we always check the geographies, the markets before we go in. And there are countries, I think, all you need to do is go and visit, and within 2 days, you figure out that this is not going to end well. Why am I here? And so we do that. Then we maintain a strong local presence in each market to build deep relations with local partners, local institutions. And we're really set to understand regional dynamics and opportunities. And that's how really we navigate this global scene.
So looking forward a little bit, obviously there's been some volatility in the financial world, certainly with COVID. And then, at the end of 21 with rates rising at an unprecedented rate. How do you prepare Investcorp to be resilient in the face of economic uncertainties? And now with the U.S. election over, how do you feel about 2025?
So we diversify. Diversification is really one of our, I believe, really major asset now. And we are diversified in asset class, but also in markets and in geographies. And we saw that really come to play in COVID when a particular market was really shut, the other one was still working. When the country was closed, other countries were working. I guess that comes with strong risk management practices. We focus on long-term value creation, and therefore we don't go to anywhere just for one single opportunity and get out, because like I said, we want to go there and continue with repeatable products and investment across the space. And we really pay a lot of attention and a lot of energy in building strong relationship and strong partnership everywhere we go.
Yeah. And different parts of the world are thriving. Others are having to catch up. But I do know that you've seen a really rapid development in Oman, and you know way more about the Middle East than almost all of our listeners, I would assume. How do you view the economic transformation of the Gulf region?
It's amazing, Tom. I mean, I grew up in a very different Oman. Like I say in the book, there was no running water, no electricity, very little infrastructure. But today, the Gulf, has probably some of the strongest economies of the world, and some of the best infrastructure that there is in the world in terms of ports, airports, roads, but also digital infrastructure, technology infrastructure. And I believe what's making it is one, forward-thinking leadership. We have young, dynamic population. 50% of them are under 30. There is a big focus on innovation and technology. There's a big focus on strong investment in sustainability and in the future, and a big emphasis on education and development of people. And so you see the Gulf has really evolved from being just a funding center to an investment destination. The region sits in a very strategic location between East and West, strong resources, and like I said, forward-thinking leadership.
Speaking of digital infrastructure and everything that's going on with technology, I don't think we could have a conversation like this without talking about AI and machine learning and all of that. How are you taking that and learning about it and maybe leveraging into what Investcorp does every day with kind of AI and machine learning, particularly into the investment process?
We are really getting into AI everywhere we can, from the simple use of ChatGPT or the language models, doing simple things. I do an interview in English and then we can do it in Chinese and Japanese using AI. Also, this institutional memory that we can make AI really help with is something we have been experimenting with, which makes it a big use for our investment teams. We're partnered with people like Diligent IQ, for instance, an AI platform for private markets due diligence. So I believe that this is something we will continue to do.
The other area I wanted to talk to you about was kind of Investcorp's approach to corporate social responsibility. And I have to think that because you're such a global organization, that might differ from different regions where you invest and where your people are. How do you view that, and how do you see it as making Investcorp a better organization?
So Investcorp DNA, right from the beginning, we are used to investors wanting to have their values reflected in their investment. Because we started with investors from the Gulf who really were keen to see their values in investment, that's why you don't see us doing anything around weapons or gambling or things like that. I think it obviously widens. We spend a lot of time on ensuring that we support education, we support sustainability as a whole, and this is a policy and a process that goes into all our committees, our investment committees. So when they look at every opportunity for investment, they also look at is it taking into consideration the planet and climate, the weather, and protecting people and environment. So I think it's something is getting more and more ingrained in what we do.
And then another forward-thinking question, Mohammed. When you kind of sit here at the end of 2024, what investment trends are you excited about when you look out over the next 10 years from kind of where your seat is? You're seeing things all over the world, different secular trends with business and technology. What are some of the trends that you think are interesting and investable, by the way?
So we focus really globally on few things. We like healthcare and anything around healthcare. And that is a big sector and industry that really brings a lot of technology in it to continue to improve really good healthcare across the world. One of our companies in India, for instance, does mobile dialysis. It brings the price down for dialysis sessions, but also it's a mobile, so people can have it in their homes. We have ensuring that waste of food is cut and employment are produced. One of our companies, again, that helps fishermen around Asia to ensure that their produce is not wasted and it goes to the end user properly done with very little waste. Education is another thing we really like, and anything around education. We think this is again it's a theme that is transforming, that's getting better, getting a lot of technology in it. I guess the infrastructure, I think, is another theme that we think is important for the future, as government across the world need help and need transformative solutions for what's going to happen with infrastructure, whether it is airports or ports or roads that are equipped for electric vehicles and the like.
That's great. I had one last question for you, Mohammed. You sit on a lot of very prestigious boards that seem very interesting and advisory councils. How do these roles kind of inform your leadership at Investcorp? What do you learn in having such a diverse set of experiences outside of Investcorp?
Well, Tom, I guess it's all really about these inputs that we all need to allow us to continue to to think and bring ideas to board. I mean, to give you an example, I'm on the advisory board of the Brookings institution in Washington, D.C., and we meet there, for 2 or 3 days every 6 months or so, and you really get to know about everything that's happening in the United States and the amazing speakers and participants that come from all walks of life, from the government and from the private sector and from the think tanks and thought leaders is really something unrivaled. I sit, for instance, on the board of trustees of the Eisenhower Fellowships. It's an organization to come and learn about, the best practices and the best technologies, and both in the United States and abroad. And to see those fellows across the world continue to take responsibilities and develop into the leaders of the future is really amazing. So it's really about these global perspectives and access to thought leadership.
Investcorp's transformation under Mohammed's leadership is a masterclass in bold thinking and trust-driven execution. In an ever-changing economic environment, Mohammed has kept his eye on the horizon, steering Investcorp through market shifts and volatility with a commitment to diversification and long-term value creation. Investcorp's global success stands as a testament to leadership focused on collaboration, vision, and adaptability. At Welcome to the Arena from ICR, we're working really hard to bring you exciting guests and great content. If you found this episode insightful, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app and leave us a 5-star rating. The more the show grows, the more interesting voices we can have on the podcast, and in turn, that should demystify a lot of the stakeholders around public companies and soon-to-be public companies. Thank you so much for listening. I'd like to thank Mohammed Alardhi for joining me on the show today. His ability to lead with vision and execute with precision sets the standard for all of us leading teams and a standard for all businesses to aspire to. This is Tom Ryan. We'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.